What's going on, folks? Welcome back to episode 26 of the Ginger Ball Pod. A little bit of a different format today. Dak unfortunately has to work the day before Thanksgiving. Take that up with his boss. And obviously, this is a special one. You see what I got on my head? I'm looking like a dumbass for you guys. No, but Thanksgiving special. We're going to talk Thanksgiving. We're going to talk moments. We're going to talk games. We're going to pick our games for this week. Beck's going to bring his picks in over text, and I'm going to add them to the spreadsheet. Last week, I beat back 11-7 on the picks. I go up by 7, I think, in the season series. So we're going to try to keep that going, see how that ends up. But let's start off top with a segment I want to do about favorite Thanksgiving Day games slash performances. And I have a game that I want to talk about. My favorite game from any Thanksgiving, we've been watching football on Thanksgiving for years. Always dinner with the fam first, finish up, kind of give the look to, Pops and the uncle. And we head down basement, watch the games, head down there. And I remember one day, 2011, Packers versus Lions in Detroit. Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, the 10-0 Packers against the 7-3 Lions. Big divisional matchup. Rodgers goes for over 300 yards, 2 tuds. James Jones and Greg Jennings both get one. Stafford throws 3 picks. Packers win 27-15, improve to 11-0. The story of the game was nothing about how the game went. The story was Ndamukong Suh stepping on Evan Dietrich Smith and getting ejected from the game, which obviously 3 years later, he goes and steps on Rodgers and gets ejected from that game as well, or ignites the rivalry between Sue and Rodgers. But just an incredible Thanksgiving game and one that I'll never forget. And before we get into Thanksgiving games for this year, I want to break down some of the Week 12 slate, which saw a few upsets from some of the what we thought were the best teams in the NFL. And let's start right away with the Bills Thursday night game against the Texans. Ooh, we talked about this on the last episode where I didn't feel comfortable picking the Bills without thought the way I did in the past. Like in the past, if the Bills were playing the Texans with Davis Mills, that's a no-brainer. You take them, you pick a money line, I mean, you put them in every parlay you have. You don't even sweat it. I had pause this year, and for good reason, because the Texans defense just absolutely suffocated the Bills in this one. D'Amico Ryans has that group playing out of their minds. The secondary is incredible. Kamari Lassiter has just been unbelievable. They pick off Allen twice in this one. Davis Mills was pretty solid again. The Texans, I think that's his fifth win as the starter for them with CJ Stroud out. So he's kept the ship afloat and then some for them as they currently sit at 6-5 and firmly in that AFC South race with the Colts starting to stumble. But this Texans defense is good enough to win them games. And that's sort of been huge for them, especially with, the run game's been better with Woody Marks sort of running the show instead of Chubb, but that defense, man, they can really just flip games on its head. And the Bills on the Bills side of this is worrying. And this is what we sort of feared with them is the offense can get clunky, and Allen, obviously, we know can take risks. And in an offense this year that hasn't been as electric as we've seen in the past, for the most part, they've had weeks where they're incredible. But some of these turnovers and some of the times where they stalled in big moments, it just it just doesn't look like a Bills team that can get over the hump in the way that we sort of expected slash wanted them to this year. I think a lot of people expected, after last season, they'd have that fire and they'd be able to try to get over the hump. But man, it just doesn't look good for them at the moment. And down the stretch, it's going to be big for them to get that confidence back. Because I think right now, to most people around the league, I think it seems like a downish year, which is crazy to say about a 7-14, but a downish year for these Bills. And it's a tough, tough loss against these Texans without CJ. And let's move to the AFC North, where the Ravens had a bit of a stumble early on against the Jets, but were able to regain their footing, take down the Jets, and regain their top spot atop the AFC North. I mean, this was a team we were sitting at Where were they? 2-5 earlier this season. Sort of just looked like a lost season. Lamar was hurt. You had Snoop Huntley in there. You had Cooper Rush in there for a few games, which I don't know why he was ever in. But you look at it now, and they really have a clear shot. Like everything's in front of them with Rodgers being out and the Steelers starting to stumble, with the Bengals without Burrow just completely falling out of the divisional race. I know they're still within earshot, but at 3-8, I think it'd just be too tough for them, even if they do win on Thanksgiving. And yeah, the Ravens, even though I still don't think they look dominant in the same way that they did the back end of last year and early this season in the first couple weeks, it's a big win for them to just get back on track. Let's move to the Chiefs. Probably the most important win for any team this weekend. Obviously, the Chiefs sitting at 5-5 couldn't possibly lose this week. Go to 5-6. They're already out of the divisional race with Denver at 9-2. And the Jags and the Chargers still at 7 wins in the AFC. It would have been tough for them to get into that wild card race had they lost this, which for long portions of the game it really looked like they were going to lose. They were down 20-9 in the fourth quarter. That fumble from Kareem Hunt down in the red zone really felt like this was going to be just a back-shattering loss for the Chiefs here, but they bounce back late. They tie it up late. They get a huge game from Rashee Rice, and they win it in overtime with a Butker kick. And all of a sudden, they're 6-5 and right in the thick of that AFC wildcard race. And honestly, the way the Colts are playing right now, they could even catch them if they fall out of the AFC South division lead. And it's just a massive win for the Chiefs. They could not lose this game, and they didn't at Arrowhead against a great AFC opponent. It's a huge win for the Chiefs, and they're right back in the thick of things. The Eagles, let's go to the NFC. The Eagles collapse versus the Cowboys. They go out to a 21-zip lead. Looks like a dominant performance against their rivals on the road. Sort of a statement win it would have been. And then the second half starts. They get some costly turnovers from the Birds with the Saquon fumble and the Xavier Gibson fumble on the punt return. Dak looked great in the second half. George Pickens was just unbelievable, unguardable in this one. There seemed to be nothing that the Eagles secondary could do. They had, the secondary over the top. Sidney Brown was trying to help out in coverage, and it just felt like nothing would work. Eagles go down a couple guys in that second half too, which I think helped out for Dallas. Reed Blankenship goes down. Makuba goes down. That probably helped a bit with the passing game. And the Cowboys win this one late. The Eagles offense stalls. Even though it felt like everything was clicking, where you had AJ Brown going, you had not the run game wasn't really going for them. I guess that's the one thing you could point to early on that you could even notice. But in the second half, just nothing was going. The deep ball wasn't there. I know they had that one deep shot to Devontae, but in the second half, just the passing game couldn't get going. The run game is still non-existent. That interior of the offensive line just isn't getting any push, especially against this improved Dallas defensive front with Quinn and Williams in there. And the Cowboys get a big win for them to kind of just slightly keep those wild card hopes alive in the NFC. And now they got a big game tomorrow against the Chiefs on Thanksgiving. The world will be watching, and it's a great chance for the Cowboys to get right back in the thick of things and sort of be a frisky, slept-on team in the NFC that I don't think many people would want to play. So that's a huge one tomorrow. But on the Eagles side of this, it's a lot of the same issues they've had throughout the season with establishing the run and playing 4 quarters of three-phase football. It's still, you get a half here, you get a half there, you get a quarter here, a quarter there. They just haven't been able to put it all together. And against your division rival, bitterly hated rival, you just can't have this collapse, and that's gonna be a bad taste in their mouth until they get back in the win column. Let's go to the Rams and the Packers, who both got dominant wins. The Rams looked absolutely incredible. That defensive front with Verse, Fisk, and some of the other guys on that front, they're looking incredible. Secondary was good. Cam Curl and Emmanuel Forbes were doing their thing. And the Bucks just couldn't get anything going. They've been struggling for weeks now. It sort of feels like a train with the wheels falling off. And especially with Baker now having that injury in his left shoulder, who knows how far that ship could sink. We'll get into that. But yeah, on the Rams side of this, they look like they might be the cream of the crop, not only in the NFC, but in the NFL. They look like the best team on both sides of the ball at the moment. Stafford's playing better than anyone right now. 30 touchdowns to just two picks. Might have an MVP in his age 38 season. Just incredible stuff from him. Puka and Devontae, and then Kyron and Corum in the run game. It's a great Rams team, and they're starting to really pick up steam here in the back half of the regular season. And for the Packers, they just happen to play a Vikings team who is incredibly terrible right now. Minnesota threw a lot at the Packers on the defensive side. Brian Flores obviously blitzes a ton, and Love was great against the blitz in this one. The offense wasn't necessarily as smooth as you'd like to see, which is, the running theme with the Packers this season. Just can't seem to, always finish off drives and look like the explosive offense that I think a lot of people think they can be. But the defense in this one was great. Mike, obviously, with the two sacks, goes up to 10 for the season. And JJ McCarthy throws two picks and is in a phantom concussion protocol, says he's in some pain on the plane ride home. We don't know if that's like a, soft benching again for him or if that's a real injury. But yeah, the Vikings are in some real trouble at 4-7 and no real quarterback situation to look forward to. I mean, they had Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold in-house last year. They move on from both. It's just really bleak right now. They're, now in contention for a top 10 pick in the draft. So that's tough for them. Let's move on to the Jags. They get a really greasy win over the Cardinals. Trevor Lawrence throws three picks in this one, three picks and three touchdowns, sort of reminiscent of that Jags Chargers game from the playoffs a few years ago when they had that crazy comeback. And all of a sudden, the Jags are right in the thick of this AFC South race. They're sitting at 7-4. The Colts stumbling, as I mentioned earlier, and the Texans at 6-5. This could be a really interesting divisional race down the stretch. But the Jags are a weird one, man. It feels like we talk about it every week, but it's tough to get a real gauge on how good they are on either side of the ball. It does feel like the defense has really dropped off from the beginning of the season when they were getting, multiple turnovers every week. Devin Lloyd looked like the best linebacker in NFL history, and now those have shored up a bit, and the defense is starting to be a bit more leaky, but they're still winning games, even in spite of how poor Trevor Lawrence has been for large parts this year and how the defense has dropped off a bit. So let's just keep an eye on the Jags in the AFC South race, and if the Colts keep dropping, who knows what could happen there. Could make it for a really interesting AFC playoff situation there. But that's all for last week's recap. Let's go to the Week 13 slate and let's make some picks here. Let's start with my boys going to Detroit on Thanksgiving. Great Packers Lions game in the early game. You love to see it. Really historic feeling there. Jordan Love, historically very good on Thanksgiving, two wins in his two games. I think he's thrown five touchdowns, no picks. Really good passer rating, really good efficiency metrics. Playing against a Lions team who the past couple weeks has looked really, really shaky. Obviously, the Eagles game 2 weeks ago, the offense couldn't get anything going, lost 16-9 there, and then they get the win this week over the Giants in very unconvincing fashion, letting up a lot of points. The Jameis-led G-men. And the Packers haven't looked so great themselves, even though they are coming off a couple wins. But yeah, I'm gonna go in this one. I mean, come on, man. I'm gonna go with my guys. I'm gonna go with the Packers here. I think Love keeps cooking on Thanksgiving. I think this was a game that was a huge difference maker 2 seasons ago for the Packers when they went to Detroit on Thanksgiving and beat them. It was big for them in their playoff push, which eventually, obviously, we beat the Cowboys in the first round and go to the divisional round in Love's first year as the full-time starter. I think this could be another big tone-setting win for the Packers if they were to win this one. Massive, massive game. Probably the game of the week here. But if it's not the game of the week, the next one is, which is Chiefs at Cowboys. I mean, this one for both teams is absolutely massive. The Chiefs sitting at 6-5, as I said, the Cowboys at 5-1, all of a sudden back in the thick of things in the NFC. Both teams desperately need this one. A loss would make things really, really difficult for them in their playoff hunt. And it's in Dallas. I don't know. This one's really tough. I think I'm going to edge it to the Chiefs just because I trust them a bit more. I know the Cowboys got that big emotional win over the Eagles, but I almost feel like that could weigh on them a bit this week on a short week. I think that was a super draining win for them. I know the Chiefs had an overtime win. It's the same thing, but I just trust them to be able to replicate that. And I want to see this Cowboys defense do it for a couple more weeks before I'm willing to just say Quinn Williams, snap of a finger fixed everything for that unit. I'm not quite ready to go all the way there. So I'm going to go Chiefs there. Bengals at Ravens. Obviously, we got the return of Joe Burrow. That's the story here in Baltimore. The Ravens, even after Lamar came back, I think they look a little shaky. Jamar Chase will also be back from suspension. I think there's gonna be a lot of points in this one. And the Bengals are playing for their season here. They needed Burrow or Flacco to win them a couple more games. They had a lot of tough ones, especially that Bears loss they had and the Jets loss. There was a lot that could have kept them afloat and didn't. It's an uphill battle from here, but the division's not completely out of sight with the Ravens only at 6-5 and the Steelers at 6-5. A win here would go a long way, and I think they're going to get it. I'm going to go Bengals here. I just think that Burrow being back and the defense was a bit better last week against the Pats. They had obviously that big pick and some big plays on special teams, but I think just a marginal improvement on the defensive side, plus Burrow coming back, all the energy that they're going to have with Chase coming back from the suspension too. I think they're going to pull this one off and really make this division interesting. This might just be because I want this division to be more interesting, but I think the Bengals could go in there and win that game. Let's go Bears at Eagles. The Bears are at 8-3, top of the NFC North. One of the stories of the season for sure. They've completely flipped the script on those late game, could go either way type of games. They've won seemingly every one of those games. I think they've been in five or six of those, last possession kind of games, and they've won all of them. They've had to get by the scruff of their neck in a lot of these games, going to Philly on Black Friday. Eagles coming off a loss to their bitter rivals, and the Cowboys. I'm just not seeing it for the Bears. I'm going to go with the Birds in this one, but I think that could be a really good game. Let's go Saints at Dolphins. This one's going to be an absolute stinker. I mean, this is this is just dog shit. I'm just going to give it to the Fins because they're home and they've played a bit better over the last few weeks, and I just really don't like watching that Saints offense, especially with Kamara now out. Texans at Colts. This one's going to be really good. It'll be interesting to see throughout the week how things are going on the injury front for the Texans, but we're going to pick as if it's Davis Mills again in Indianapolis. Colts, hanging on by a thread down that divisional race against a great Texans defense, but I'm gonna edge it to the Colts. I just think they get back on track this week at home with a divisional win. Let's go Falcons at Jets. Kirk Cousins, gets the win last week against the Saints. I think a lot of people picked the Saints in that one. The Jets with Tyrod, they were decent against the Ravens. The offense wasn't great, but they were able to stick in that game for a long time. At home against the Falcons, this Jets team, I can't pick them. I'm sorry. I just think they're so bad. So I'm going to go with the Falcons, even though I think Drake London's going to be out again in this one. And keep an eye out on that Falcons team if they do win this game. That'll be their fifth win, just behind both the Bucks and the Panthers. With Baker out, with the Panthers looking a lot worse, they could be right back in that division, even with Kirk at the helm. 49ers at Browns. I love that Browns defense. I think Myles Garrett can win games by himself. Shador looked a lot better last week against the Raiders, but I mean, they're out of their depth here. I think they can really stifle the Niners offense, maybe create some turnovers, but I just think the Niners have a bit too much for them, especially the way CMC is playing. Let's go to Rams at Panthers. Obviously, we just mentioned it. Panthers with a really brutal performance against the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Couldn't turn any of those Brock Purdy turnovers into points, it felt like, and just couldn't really capitalize on that. The offense looks terrible over the last few weeks. It's the Rams are to me the best team in football right now. I don't necessarily think this one will be that close, even though it is in Carolina. Let's go Jags at Titans. Cam Ward been a lot better of late. The Jags obviously sketchy. I mean, every win they have feels like they're sort of just falling into it. But, I don't think the Titans really want to win games at this point. I think right now they need a high draft pick again. So I'm going to go with the Jags. Although I think that game's going to be closer than people think in Tennessee. Cards at Bucks. This one's gonna be weird, man. We got Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback for the Bucks. I know he can put in a shift and he can be fine. That's a big loss, man. Baker going out with that shoulder. We'll see how long he's out. I think it was an AC joint sprain, so it shouldn't be too long, probably like a few weeks. Jacoby Brissett's been pretty solid for the Cardinals. I think they'll be without Marv again with the appendix, but they've been frisky. Michael Wilson looks like man reborn with Marv out and Brissett at the helm. Cards defense has been pretty bad lately. I'm gonna go. I think Brissett's better than Bridgewater right now. And I think they can put up points. So I'm actually going to go with the Cards here. I know that's not a popular pick, but let's roll with it. Vikings at Seahawks. Not much needs to be said. Darnold back against the Vikings could be pretty funny. I think he's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going there. Well, it'll be at home, but playing against KOC and those Vikings who passed up on him for this dumpster fire of a QB situation, they're just so much better than the Vikings at everything essentially right now besides Jefferson. And you could even argue that JSN's been better than him. He definitely has been better than him this year, but is the better player right now. So it's the Seahawks by a wild margin in this one. I think it's a blowout. Bills at Steelers. This is massive. Obviously, the Steelers are hoping to get Rodgers back in this one in Pittsburgh against the Bills team who's shown a lot of cracks in the last few weeks. But I think the Bills get back on track here with a win. Just don't trust that Steelers defense enough, even with the way that TJ Watt's been playing. I'm going to go with the Bills in that one. Raiders at Chargers. The Chargers might have a Marion Hampton back in this one. The Raiders might be the worst team in football. This is a no-brainer to me. We're going to go with the Chargers. And then that brings us to the Sunday night game. Broncos at Commanders. A lot of noise about Jaden Daniels potentially being back this week. That could be big for the Commanders. I don't really think it matters. I think this Broncos defense is so good that they'll stifle whoever's at quarterback for the Commanders, and the Commanders are just having a bit of a season from hell. So I'm going to go with the Broncos in that one. I think it's a good matchup for them, even on the road, the way they're playing on the defensive side. And then let's go finally, Giants at Pats, Monday Night Football. Jameis has been awesome. He could make this a fun game. It might even be Dart again. We don't know if he's back from concussion protocol yet. The news hasn't been reported. I know that he was limited today in practice, but we'll have to wait throughout the week. Monday night gives him an extra day to pass protocol, so the odds are that he probably could play in this one. But either way, I think they could make it interesting against a Pats team who struggled pretty mightily against the Bengals and will be without Will Campbell on the left side of that offensive line. I think the Pats are going to win this, but I think it's going to be close. I think the Giants make it frisky. And that'll do it, folks. I know it was just me on this one, but we're hoping to get back next week and maybe even some guest hosts in the future. Enjoy Thanksgiving with your families, and let's go. Thanksgiving football, baby. Come on. See you guys.